be a further splintered crossbench. We'll go now, though, to our political panel for reaction on the budget update with some insight already as to the sort of figures we're going to get. We're talking now to Michael Sukkar, of course, a backbencher from the Liberal Party, and also Amanda Rishworth from the Labor Party. Thanks both for your time this morning. I might start with you, Michael Sukkar, because the last time Australia lost its AAA credit rating was way back in 1986. The last time it was downgraded at all was 1989, and indeed Australia regained the AAA credit rating from all three agencies under Labor. It's not going to look great if your side of politics loses it.
Well, Tom, what we're discussing today is something that we've been reiterating for the entire length of this government, and that is the urgency of budget repair. Every step of the way since Labor bequeathed this country billions and billions of debt, we have spoken about the need to repair the budget, and Labor's thwarted us every step along the way. As the Treasurer has said this morning, just in this first 6 months of this term alone, we've delivered budget savings of $22 billion. Again, Labor, with a couple of exceptions, has basically fought us every step of the way. And let's remember that Labor took to the last election spending of some additional $16 billion than the coalition. So if you imagine that we have budgetary difficulties now in the way that you've described, let's imagine a circumstance where we hadn't banked the many tens of billions of dollars of savings that have been quite painstakingly fought by this government, I might say, plus an additional $16 billion that Labor has got on the table. So, look, I think what we see today, Tom, is it reiterates the urgency that we have had in government and we've spoken about, and I think it's now incumbent on Labor to accept that they did leave this country a budget disaster and they have a responsibility to support us in fixing it.
OK, what about the words of Tony Abbott? We will be a no surprises, no excuses government.
I completely agree with those statements, and I don't think we have been. We've delivered huge savings in the face of quite unprincipled opposition in the Senate.
But just to that point, because there aren't surpluses and you're talking about the Senate and Labor, I mean, that sounds a bit like an excuse.
No, it doesn't at all. I mean, we've improved the bottom line by many tens of billions of dollars, Tom. The fact is we've done that in the face of stringent opposition from the Labor Party, and the alternative government in this country had promised before the last election many tens of billions of dollars of additional spending. So ultimately, Australian politics is a contest, and we are doing everything in our power to make sure that we do return the budget to balance. I'm confident that the Treasurer and the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister are going to maintain that commitment.
Amanda Rishworth, if I can get you to Michael Sukkar's point that Labor was going to have the budget worse off in the forward estimate, $16.5 billion. I know it was supposed to be better off over 10, but if the AAA credit rating is downgraded by ratings agencies today, isn't it hard for Labor to crow too much, considering it would have almost certainly happened under you as well, wouldn't it?
Well, look, I'd like to make a couple of points, Tom. First, Michael did what the Prime Minister and the Treasurer does as well, and just makes excuses after excuses for why they haven't done the job. Now, of course, they've been in government for 4 years. You'd think they've just got elected, but of course they've been in government for 4 years, and what we've seen is the economy deteriorate, and indeed the fact that they have continued to ignore the threat of the AAA credit rating, and they did that by offering $50 billion worth of tax cuts to big business. That is money that could be returned to the bottom line. Instead, they are offering this large tax cut to big businesses. Now, Labor has always said we will work constructively on responsible saving measures that are fair, and that is why we have a proposal that we've put on the table, that we took to the last election, that we're urging the government to take up, and that is to pare back the negative gearing arrangements in this country. So we are putting forward responsible policies.
But we do know, Amanda Rishworth, but even with those proposals in the 4 years, this is what Labor said last election, and Chris Bowen stood up and said this, that it would be worse off over the 4 years, $16.5 billion. So if that downgrade does happen, how can Labor say it wouldn't have happened under them?
Well, look, what I think the rating agencies are seeing is a government that has no path towards surplus. They have no path to reducing their debt. Under this government, we've seen a tripling of the deficit and no real clear path forward. We've seen large tax giveaways to large businesses in the country and the inability to really look at any sensible revenue measures like negative gearing. What we've seen is a complete lack of direction from this government that is hurting our economy. We've seen a quarter of negative growth in the last quarter, as well as 50,000 full-time jobs lost. I mean, this is not a government managing an economy that puts much confidence into the Australian people.
Michael Sukkar, you know, when facts change, you can change policies or change your mind. I'm wondering if there's any pause for thought at all on the company tax cut and just how many companies it'll expand to eventually, you know, companies of all size, multinationals, $1 billion or more, that when you look at the state of the books now, you wonder if it's affordable, and can you rein in the plans for that a bit?
Well, Tom, the reality is that Australians now, they want more hours in their casual or part-time job. They want more full-time jobs available. And what we know is that in a competitive global environment, if we want to see companies investing in Australia, creating those extra hours, creating those extra jobs, creating the extra GDP that's ultimately going to improve the budget bottom line, we have to remain internationally competitive. And that's the reality. Now, Amanda talks about company tax cuts. Well, let's remember, we haven't got any company tax cuts in the system yet, and we know for a fact that Labor's budget bottom line would be at least $16.5 billion worse over the forward estimates. Now, there's no way that Amanda can wriggle out of that. There's no way that Amanda can also deny the fact
You're in
that
government, Michael.
The Labor Party has tried to thwart us every step of the way on budget repair. They have. Let's also remember, because these are very salient facts, that when we left government in 2007, we had some $70 billion in the bank. When we returned to government, we were many hundreds of billions of dollars in debt. That was under Amanda's watch. Amanda was a senior member of that government. So, look, we won't be lectured by Labor. Labor talking about budget repair is a bit like the fox in the hen house. We will continue to improve the budget. We've made budget savings of $22.5 billion in just 6 months. Many of those against the wishes of the Labor Party, and we'll continue to do so.
I'll take that as a no and a rethink at all on the company tax cut. Amanda Richworth, what about Labor and its position? Because obviously you've got commitments, and this worsening of the position, you would have to concede, is as a result of income tax receipts down, company tax receipts down. So this is a position for you as well. Do you think from here Labor's policies, when they cast forward, should be about reining in spending and making sure there aren't further blowouts, or are you more worried about the economy?
Well, look, I think we've got to absolutely be committed to protecting the AAA credit rating, and that's what Bill Shorten has done. But we shouldn't be taking an approach that slashes and burns the economy. I mean, we've got to be focused on middle and working Australians, and focus that they don't get, I guess, cut by the budget and hurt by the budget. So
sure, but just quickly, because we're nearly out of time. So on these figures, because there is now less money to play with, if you like, or the budget will be worse unless you make cuts. So where do you sit on this position, given we're looking at more write-downs that either side will inherit?
Well, look, of course, we've got to see the figures coming out today, but we have already proposed a number of sensible savings measures, as well as revenue measures, a combination of those, including our negative gearing proposal, as well as cutting the Liberal national baby bonus. So we've put a number of savings on the table. We'll continue to work in a responsible way, but what we won't do is smash middle and working Australians and actually making it worse off for them, while at the same time, like the government's doing, supporting tax cuts to very large businesses.
OK, we did want to get on to a couple other topics, but we're right out of time. Just quickly, Michael Sukkar.
Well, I think that's code, Tom, for the Labor Party's never seen spending they don't like. They can't say no to spending, and Amanda's just confirmed it then.